And when we move our feet, we don't sit in the grumbling, and we move toward the heart of God. His word says that he will draw near to us.
Hi, welcome back to another week of Behind and Beyond. I'm Allison, and this week I get to sit down with Pastor Brad Beggs, a fun guest of the podcast here.
Hi, Allison.
It's been a while since we've had you on the podcast.
Yeah.
Excited to have you here.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah.
Always pumped to be on Behind and Beyond.
Maybe a couple of things to address. We're coming in a little bit late this week because of a snowstorm. So Tuesday morning is when we normally
We were all set.
meet up. I know.
We were all ready.
So now it's the end of the day, Thursday, and so we will do our best here to. Do you remember the sermon still? You ready to go?
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's still in there a little bit.
Good. And then also you're probably like maybe wondering why Brad is the person, because you, depending on what campus you go to, you would have heard someone different speak. So Brad, could you kind of explain how the services worked this past weekend?
Yeah, super unique weekend in that regard. So I owned the outline this time, and then.
Can you explain what that means? Like you?
Yeah,
helped,
so I put together the script, just like the bare bones script. You know, we had like a whiteboard session and talked about certain elements of the message, how it fits within the greater context of the teaching series. But ultimately, I put that together and then sent it out to the other campus pastors, and then they contextualize it. They make it their own, based on where they're teaching. But I believe Pastor Vince was out of town, and then Pastor John in Dormont was just feeling a little ill. I mean, it's the season.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like
season.
everywhere.
Yeah.
So I taught on Saturday night in Wexford, and that was used as the capture. But then on Sunday morning, I was here in Swickley Valley.
The capture meaning what you would have seen
What
online,
you would have seen online,
or
yes,
at
if you watched it.
City or Dormont.
And then Dormont used it on Sunday morning, and so did the city.
Mm-hmm.
But the other campuses, they were live on their location, including Wexford on Sunday morning.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so very unique, very different like that.
So
even people in Swickley were like, wait, we saw you last. Why are you here?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, a little bit different. So just hang with us. We'll be okay.
Yeah.
We'll get it out there.
So depending on what campus you attend, you may have heard someone other than Brad give the message, but Brad is the one who kind of helped shape the message. So he's the one that was invited to come talk today.
And it was a ton of fun too. And getting to teach in Swickley is always amazing. But also on Saturday night in Wexford was super fun.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, you're partly invited to come back here and talk because of you owning the outline, but you're also partly invited, I think, because you are like one of our top viewed podcast
Come on,
guests.
let's go.
Yeah, do you know that?
I don't, but that's fantastic.
Anytime you've been on the podcast, it is like numbers shoot through the roof. People love to listen to you. So
no pressure.
Yeah, so it's exciting to have you here.
Man.
And I thought you may or may not know, we always start off with an icebreaker generally.
I have heard this.
Okay.
I have heard that there are icebreakers. So
there's one that I've already asked Dave, but I kind of wanted to recycle for you because I feel like it fits your personality.
Okay.
For those who don't know, Brad was actually a worship pastor for a long time.
Oh yeah, there was
becoming,
a season.
Yeah. Well, you've done a lot of jobs here.
Yes.
Student ministry.
Yep. Kids.
You've done kids. Okay. I didn't know you did kids.
That was my first role.
Okay. There you go.
Kids ministry.
Yeah. So, but the worship pastor part is what I'm hoping comes out in this question. So one of my favorite questions is, if you had to karaoke to save your family's life and you had to get at least a 6 out of 10, what is the song that you're going to choose?
Oh my goodness. That is an incredible question. Props to you. That's amazing.
Well, thanks. But what do you?
6 out of 10 at least to save my family's. I mean, I like Disney. Like Disney songs.
Yeah.
I mean, forever, right?
Okay.
And then Lin-Manuel Miranda put together the Moana soundtrack. And he's got that rap.
This is where I was hoping you were going to go.
Yes, he's got that rap in Moana 1. I think the song's called You're Welcome. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is, if I had to throw it down, that's what I'd do.
Okay, so what I was hoping is that.
You're kidding.
What's the chance that we could get a quick sample? I've heard you do this at Kids Gig, and you are incredibly talented at the Moana song.
Now I gotta bring it back to mind.
I would give you a 10 out of 10 on the Moana song, actually.
Yes.
Do you have it just ready to go in your mind?
I could probably throw down that rap.
Okay, let's hear it.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
kid. Honestly, I could go on and on. I could explain every natural phenomenon. The grass, the tide, the ground. Oh, that was me. I was messing around. I killed a snake and I buried his guts. I sprouted a tree. Now you got coconuts. What is the lesson? Now what is the takeaway? Don't mess with Maui when he's on a breakaway. And that tapestry here on my skin, it's a map of the victories I win. Look where I've been. I make everything happen now. Look at that many me Maui just tickety tap and singing and clap and watching me rap and scratching and slap and bringing that chorus back. Now sing it with me. Say, what can I say except...
You did. You're welcome.
There it is.
There you go.
You did it.
Yeah, but
my family's alive. I can't believe we just did that on the podcast.
Good job. Way to go.
Dave is calling me into his office.
10 out of 10. 12 out of 10. 12 out of 10. Yeah, you can tell Dave you got a 12. So right. I don't know. I think he just squeaked by with like a 6. So he didn't do it. He didn't do it on the podcast. Right. Yeah, he just talked about it. All right. I want to know how you memorize the song. Are you just like practicing it over and over again? How do you get this song down?
I love like Disney and when they've got the fast-paced songs. Yeah. And I mean, when you drive in the van with your kids, you know, on long trips.
It's hard to find. You got to find something that you like too as an adult that they're going to
listen
to.
And that Moana 1 soundtrack is fire.
One, you have to really say 1. I feel like there's a big difference between the two.
There's a difference. So you're in the van long enough, you could learn anything.
Yeah.
And the kids are like, play it again.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. Well, now a hard pivot into the
grumbling. Yeah. Hey.
Into the sermon. The first question I usually ask anybody is anything that you felt like you didn't get to cover this weekend that you wish you'd had some more time for, or you know, a lot of times when you're starting to plan, there's lots of ideas, maybe even in your whiteboarding session with the other campus pastors that were interesting, but just kind of couldn't make the cut or didn't go with the direction.
Yeah. Oh man. So, we talked about grumbling. That was the big idea. And a direction I didn't go in that I really liked was God's clearly testing his people, right, in the wilderness. And part of their grumbling is because they're not faithfully following, you know, where he's leading them and how he's leading them and how he's providing for them. And so, you know, you've got the Israelites grumbling that they don't have water, right? Or the water is bitter at that place at Marah. And then Moses throws the log in, there's a miracle there. And then after that, they need food. And so God provides the manna. And then after that, they need water again. And they're just grumbling over and over again. But each one of those tests actually points toward God's grace in the form of the gift of Jesus. And I think that was something that I would have loved to maybe unpack a little bit more.
Yeah. What do you mean by that? Could you do it here?
So like God's gift of water. So, you know, we are like, God provides what we need daily, right? And that picture of water is you know, it's Jesus. Like he's our living water, right? The Bible talks about that over and over again. And so there's the gift of life. And then there's the gift of a Sabbath. And so what God was really teaching his children, the Israelites, with the manna was, hey, go out and gather it in the morning. You'll have enough for that day, but don't store it. It'll spoil. And then on the 5th day, gather enough for 2 days, because Sunday or their Sabbath would have been a day of rest. And so you're not going to find it when you go out. And so it was that test. But it was also a gift because God knew that they would need to rest. And so you've got the gift of life. You've got the gift of rest. And then when they need water again, God tells Moses to speak to the rock, where before he had struck the rock. And I thought it was just so beautiful, like the parallel of you know, Jesus is our rock, and he was struck once and for all. And so God was saying to Moses, like, don't strike the rock, just speak to it, and water will come out. But Moses struck it. And for us, you know, Christ, our rock, he was struck once, and all we need to do now is ask. And I think that's a beautiful parallel of like the gift of grace that God has given us through that story that always points to Jesus. So I probably would have jumped into that if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting.
Like beautiful parallels there.
That definitely. Yeah. Yes, for sure. I'm curious about the topic of grumbling and how it got assigned to you, of all people, because
I'm such a grumbler.
I'm going to be honest. If I think about you, you were probably one of the more naturally, unless I'm just missing something, you seem like a naturally optimistic person to me and a pretty positive person. So has that just always come naturally to you, or is that something that you feel like God has developed in you? I'm curious about how you think about grumbling.
Yeah, I mean, God's always growing us, teaching us. But I think for me, I've always been like a glass half full kind of person, always a peacekeeper, peacemaker, always wanting to celebrate. I believe we've just been given a lot of opportunity to celebrate. There's so much in this world that we could grumble about. Why look for more when you can do the opposite and celebrate and bring joy into people's lives? And so, I think even like when I was little, I was the type of kid that was like, hey, you want to play ball? Sweet. You don't want to play ball? Sweet. What do you want to do? And we can just go from it there. So I think I've always just kind of had a more joyful bent.
Yeah. Well, so what advice do you have because that is great that your personality is already naturally kind of has that bent. But what about, not all of us are blessed with an optimistic personality.
And here's the thing.
And that's not necessarily wrong, right? So how do you, if that doesn't come as naturally to you just because of your wiring, what would you suggest?
Yeah. Well, first, let me just say, I grumble.
Sure.
Plenty of grumbling. We all do. I would point to that third response to grumbling and just practice gratitude. But like really practice it. I have this little full focus planner, and half of it's a planner, and that's great. But the other half is room to journal. And it really is making lists every single day of just the things that you're grateful for, the things that God has given you, or what he's showing you, or what he's doing in your life. Because to be able to look back even in a week and to see, even if it's 3 a day, oh God, like I'm thankful for this, this, and this. And at the end of the week, you've got 21 different things to look back and say, wow, like God, thank you. Thank you. I think that's one of the best ways to kind of, punch back when grumbling takes you down.
Yeah, I agree. I've tried to make that, I think I've maybe talked about that here on this podcast before, but I was listening a lot of times to podcasts on my way into work, sometimes news or like leadership podcasts, and it would make me just kind of more agitated, I guess, or critical. I feel like it was making me critical. And so I've, over the past year, tried to put a practice in the mornings when I'm driving to work to just name things that I feel like God has and sometimes it's this maybe sounds silly, but it's just the process of even driving and looking for things out in nature on my way to work where I feel like, oh, that's really beautiful. God, thanks for that little moment of delight or whatever. Just to kind of, and it puts me in a much more grateful, positive posture starting the day. Yeah, for sure.
I think celebrating is another big one. I know I just said that a little bit earlier, but when someone celebrates you, you carry that throughout the day. And there's not a lot of space for grumbling when someone's really, blown some wind in your sails and given you, a compliment or celebrated who you are or something that you've done. Our team here at Swickley, every Tuesday, first 30 minutes, we're going to celebrate. We're going to pray and celebration. Yeah, because if you can't find one thing in the past 7 days that God has done in your life, or in our case in ministry, then we're not looking.
Yeah, and I think that is the thing. For some people, I think that comes really naturally to just kind of the glass half full kind of people are just bent to naturally see the positive in things. For those who aren't, I think, and I mean for everybody, but especially those who maybe aren't naturally wired that way, they really, I think, we, myself included, need to then make it a spiritual practice that you're more disciplined about doing, because maybe it doesn't come as naturally. And so I do think sometimes we don't think of gratitude or finding delight in God, or the way that he, just the small, tiny miracles. My 8-year-old the other day was sitting by our space heater, or not our space heater, our heater, our heater vents turned on, and it was on the snow day. And he was sitting there reading a book, and he just goes, one of the small pleasures of life. And it made me
that's amazing.
So happy, because I was like, I hope that you carry that trait, that ability in you.
That's it. That's it right there.
The rest of your life, because I think that is how you see joy in life. And it is a spiritual practice of finding it in Something simple, sitting next to the heat, reading a book.
And that's what you have to do, because you don't want to fake it. But I do think there is an element of not faking it, but like, so I think of it this way, like sometimes when we're worshiping together as the church, there are even times for me, like, I don't want to raise my hands in worship. Sometimes that can make people uncomfortable, but I think sometimes for me, like, I have to just kind of not fake it till you make it, but like, I want to put my hands up to worship God, because I believe that that's where I want to be, even if I'm not there in the moment. And then inevitably I'm there, right? A minute later, I'm like, yes, actually, this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just got to start.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing is true with celebrating. Sometimes just force yourself to do it, and then over time, through repetition, you'll naturally find the joy in it.
Yeah.
And again, no space for grumbling when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is our final sermon in the Wilderness series, which it feels like wild that we're wrapping this up.
I mean, how long
we've been in
has
the
it
wilderness
been?
for a while.
And you could
now.
grumble about that.
But I think it's been quite a journey, and I think it's been a really great sermon series. But it feels like, so grumbling's, that's it. We're done now. So I'm curious how did this become how did you or the teaching team decide that this would be like the final sermon in our series? And then kind of like, and why was it the final theme that we chose to explore? I think
two things. One, the calendar, right? This is kind of where we ended up. And then two, that passage in 1 Corinthians. I think this is the last thing that Paul addresses. That's probably, the combination of those two things led us to land on grumbling.
Which I think is so interesting. Do you have you don't have your Bible with you. 1 Corinthians 10:6. I was thinking that was the Bible. Let me just look it up really quick so we can read it together.
I didn't bring my Bible to the podcast.
Well, you know what? I've got it right here. Okay, so now these things took place as examples for us, that we might not desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. We must not indulge in sexual immorality, as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day. And we must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did and were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble, as some of them did and were destroyed by the destroyer. So this is quite a list, right? I'm curious, why do you think Paul includes grumbling in a list that also includes idolatry and sexual immorality?
I mean, I think because he knows the gravity of what grumbling does. I mean, it's poison, and it will lead to destruction. And where some of the other ones are more like outward destructive things in nature and stuff like that, grumbling kills us from the inside out. And it's kind of like one of those hidden traps. And it was true for the Israelites. It was true for the church in Corinth. It was true for the disciples of Jesus, and it is certainly true for us today. And so, and there's probably a piece of it that was very much connected to all of the other ones as well. But it was definitely something he was seeing specifically in the church. Yeah. And I think we see it today too.
I think it's so interesting because I think we can see idolatry or what was the other one, sexual immorality, as these really giant sins, and then grumbling is just kind of, you mentioned in your sermon even, kind of funny at times.
We can chuckle at it, like, oh, they're just grumpy.
Not that big of a deal. And so there's something to pause and consider that Paul is putting these together as being destructive to the God's people.
Yeah. I mean, it turns into a real posture of living for a lot of people. And something that we will, like, I think about it like a computer. Like it's almost something that's just like hardwired into the mainframe of who we are. So much so that if we don't highly consider responding to grumbling with some of these other things, we'll revert right back to that default setting every single time, because we've learned to just kind of sit there. And in a lot of ways, I think like it's kind of like drama. Like it feeds us sometimes, but we know it's not good. So I think for Paul, again, it was a poison that he saw both in the Israelites and in the church in Corinth, that was slowly eating away at the lives and the souls of the people there. It was that destructive.
Yeah, I thought my husband had pointed out even that you said grumbling is an act of pride, and that was just like such a small line, but it packed a lot of punch because I don't think you think of it that way.
Yeah.
And you're right. A lot of times when I'm grumbling is because I could do better. What are these people thinking?
I know best.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, it was that part where we talked about like it puts us in the judge's seat and it puts God on trial. And so we end up, it's so funny. We read about the Israelites and we think like, how could you guys miss it? Like, how could you be so ignorant and foolish and selfish and prideful? All we need to do is look in the mirror, right? Because whether we say it out loud, we definitely say it in our hearts, like, God, you owe me this. You owe me a certain circumstance, a different circumstance. And it's just, it's ridiculous. Because when you step back and look at it, you're like, wow, like I could invite you into this, God, or I could, with an ugly heart, just put you on trial and accuse you and blame you for all of these things. And that kind of led to that point about rebellion, because that's what it is. And that's what the Israelites did.
Yeah.
And we do it too.
Yeah. Well, it's so quick. I'm so quick to judge the Israelites. But then I think about if I just spend 24 hours camping, I can be.
Oh my goodness. It all comes back to camping.
You don't really want to see what type of person I am after 3 days of camping or whatever. So
you lose yourself. You lose yourself out there.
They have been out there. Yeah. They're roughing it. So.
Well, and you got to think about it this way too. You read it and you're like, come on guys. Like, how could you doubt God's power? He just led you by a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day, through the Red Sea, all of these amazing things. They just worshiped God, right? They just got to the other side and they sang this beautiful song about how amazing God is. And then, it's literally 72 hours later.
Yeah.
They're grumbling. And you're like, how could you miss it? But I always think like they were slaves for 400 years. So, I mean, that means their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, for some of them, I mean, it's all they've ever known is slavery. They have no identity whatsoever. And yes, God's doing these amazing things, but they get out into the wilderness and some of their basic needs aren't being met in the way that they were being met, even in slavery, and they begin to grumble. And I just think like, you don't have an identity. And so when you don't have an identity, you choose to aim your complaints towards certain things in people. And that's where like, we do that. And we have an identity. We know who we are in Christ, and God is the one who provides. And so when I think about it that way, that's when I'm like, okay, I can maybe ease up on my critical eye toward my judgment.
Well, look at me grumbling about the Israelites grumbling.
Yeah, right.
Being like critical of them.
Amazing.
Yeah, I really appreciated that you didn't leave it at just like don't grumble.
Yeah.
And just like get better at it and
Come on, Northway.
Be blessed,
just
everybody.
Stop it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think sometimes that can be our temptation, right? Like, oh, God says we shouldn't grumble. And so I'll just work really hard to stop grumbling. But instead you gave us 3 healthy ways to handle our frustrations and disappointments. So draw near to God, prayer, and I think lament prayer, which was important. I'd like to talk a little bit more about, and then practice gratitude. So if you're cool with that, I just wanted to kind of unpack all of these a little bit more.
Love it. Yeah.
So the first one in drawing near to God, I think, what do you think that looks like, particularly as for someone who is feeling maybe spiritually numb or cynical after or in a season of wilderness? What practical suggestions do you have for someone who's like, that's hard. I've tried to draw near to God and I feel like I don't sense him or know how to do that.
Yeah. And so, as much as it's like an individual, action and movement, it's also a collective one too. And this is one of my favorite parts. It's just about being a part of Northway and about being a part of the church in general, is that I know that there are others that are going through things that I'm going through. And when we can all get into a room or get into a space or spend time together and voice that together, by drawing near to God in worship and through prayer and through teaching and learning together, it makes it better in every way. And so to answer that question, James 4:8 says, "Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you." And so I lean in on that word, He will. It's a promise. And when we move our feet and we don't sit in the grumbling and we move toward the heart of God, His word says that He will draw near to us. And again, just like kind of like getting your hands up for worship, like it takes repetition, it takes time. And if you remember the definition of grumbling that I used in the message, it was a habitual expression of our distrust in God. And so there is an element of trust that is needed for this, to trust that God will draw near as we continue to stop, press pause on the things that are causing us to grumble or the things that are causing us to complain and doubt God, and really lean into his promises. And I mean, it's simple, but like you got to bust that Bible open and really just look for those promises and recite them and rehearse them and preach them to yourself and speak them to your own soul. And, for me, that drawing near is big in that way. So I think that's I never want to overcomplicate it. Yeah. I think for me, sometimes it's just like, let's lean in together in that way.
I think what you said about sometimes you have to kind of take the steps, even if you're not feeling it or something in the moment, is really important.
Yeah. And do it together too. Yeah. Reach out and do it with others.
Yeah. Well, even when you're talking about worship in the sense of like, sometimes I put my body in a posture of praise, even if my heart isn't feeling it in the moment. I sometimes think about that in worship. Like there have been times where I'm going through a really hard season and worship feels actually really difficult for me.
Impossible.
Corporate within the church setting. And sometimes when I'm walking through that, I think about like those who can sing right now, though, are helping carry me as part of the body. And so I just kind of sometimes I'm like, Lord, may their worship be mine. Yes. Like help. And that's beautiful. And vice versa. Yeah. In the times when I can feel worship, may it carry those who are struggling to worship right now as well. So
when I see someone singing and someone lifting their hands and worshiping and even doing that, little sidestep deal, right? Like when I see that, I'm encouraged. It almost like gives me permission to take that step. And inevitably, I can get there as well. So,
okay, let's talk about lament specifically. I think that sometimes the idea of lament can be maybe a little bit new or difficult, maybe particularly in a evangelical, modern, not like non-denominational context, because we just sometimes tend to be like, we love the loud worship songs and there is a celebration is actually something I think generally we do really well, but then sometimes we have maybe swung the pendulum to not knowing how to lament well. And so I really love that you took some time to break that down. I think a couple questions around this, and maybe you can just pick which one you want to answer. I'll ask them both, and so you can lean in where you're most interested. But how do you both practice honest lament, I think, without sliding into grumbling is a question I had. But then maybe another one that I'm interested in exploring is what lament looks like in community. You talked a lot about how to practice lament as an individual, and Scripture gives examples of that. But are there ways to kind of practice lament together in small groups or in worship? Kind of what we were even just talking about.
Yeah, so I mean, first off, like the Bible talks about lamenting in community. There's a beautiful story in, I think it's like 2 Chronicles. You got to dig for it, but it's a prayer that was prayed and called together by King Jehoshaphat when his people faced a pretty intense like invading army, and they knew what was coming, and so they had to get together and pray. And it was they weren't accusing God. They weren't, accusing their leaders or anything. It was like, we need to almost like grieve what's about to happen together, but also in the process, trust that God's going to lead us through it. And I thought that was really cool that like they could lament through prayer together. That produced more faith and more trust in God. And I think we feel like we have to have it all together, and we can't bring our weaknesses and our struggles and our doubts and our fears, and we think God is not big enough, in a moment to say, God, I'm really mad, I'm really angry. Like he can handle that. He's stronger than that. And when we do that together, we not only encourage one another in our struggles and our doubts, but ultimately it produces faith. That, okay, you and me and us together, God is with us. He hears us. He sees us, and he will lead us through that. And we're not discarding our feelings and our emotions about what's happening. So it's not a distrust in God. It's just an honest, we're lamenting. We are bringing this stuff to God because we could turn it in a way that is accusing him, but we're not. We're choosing to trust. And so, for me, that's a big one. And honestly, like for our church, I think of Rooted, I think of the small groups and stuff like that. Those are always the most beautiful moments. We can kind of rest in that together. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, it does.
Some of the thoughts,
Yeah.
But you see it all throughout Scripture. There are these like community lamenting moments.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the other one. I had it in one of my notes. Oh, yeah. So in Acts 4, after Peter and John are released from custody, the early believers gather to pray, acknowledging God's sovereignty and asking for boldness in the face of persecution. And just how this shows us the spirit of communal lament in prayer during times of suffering. I think that's a picture of the church back then and for us today.
Yeah. And I think you're right in how it strengthens faith. Yeah. We sometimes shy away from it because it feels like somehow it's not displaying faith, to be honest about our lament.
Right. Like it shows us weakness or something like that, which is so false.
Yeah. And I think the leaning into it in community is such a, can be such a strength and a builder of our faith together.
And we forget that it really is like a lament prayer or prayer lament. It helps us direct our struggles. Not again, to God in a way that we accuse him, but to God in a way that we bring it to him and he grieves it with us. Yeah. It's such an interesting concept that like God, he really does care about the things that we care about. I love that Hebrews passage, right? Jesus is our great high priest who's not unable to sympathize, aka suffer with, because he went through it, yet without sin. And so we can trust that. Yeah. And that'll lead to more faith.
Yeah. Okay. And then you had, I'm watching our time. And I have more questions written, but the one I wanted to really get to is that before we were just like chatting before the podcast got started and you were talking about the rabble and I want to like dive in there a little bit more because you were giving me some context that I was like, what? This is blowing my mind. So could we just unpack that a little bit? You mentioned it briefly in the sermon, but I don't feel like there was much time spent there.
And there's not a lot in the actual scriptures, but if you dig into it, you'll find out more about this very interesting group of people. The Bible calls it a mixed multitude of people. And then I think it's the ESV calls it the rabble. A group of people who came out of Egypt with the Israelites. So they were in Egypt. They weren't slaves. Some of them were Egyptians. Some of them, maybe they were just on the outskirts of the city. Who knows? But they saw God's hand at work. They saw the plagues and they're like, holy cow, this is nuts. This isn't Pharaoh. This is God. And so something in them said, okay, so I'm going with him, right? And so they leave Egypt with the Israelites. And so if you can picture the Israelites in this big, long line, leaving Egypt, going through the Red Sea, and then into the wilderness in kind of like a big line. At the end of that line, there's this group of people that they saw God's hand, they went with him, but they didn't share Israel's values. And so they're just kind of along for the ride. So they're this rabble. And so what's so interesting is that at the front of the line, they would have come to the place where the water was bitter, the place called Mara. And they would have acknowledged that. But then news would have traveled to the back of the line. And so when it hits the back of the line where the mixed multitude is, when they get thirsty, when they get hungry, they start wailing. And that wailing is the initial complaint and grumbling that then spreads the complaint and the grumbling back up the line to the front. And so it spreads like wildfire. But it points to, this group of people that cause them to complain. And that's true of us too. Like we've got these environments that we find ourselves in where there are just grumblers around us and they influence us in big ways. And so it was super interesting that this group of people was so influential.
It is, but it's also, I'm just thinking about this for the first time because I'd never really paid much attention to that language of mixed multitude. I guess I just thought it was only the Israelites going out. So this is why it's blowing my mind because I'm like, what? There are other people?
Yep. And one translation called them the riffraff.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh, wow.
Jeez.
Reminds me of like being in elementary school or something.
Yeah.
Like, stay away from riffraff.
It sounds like an Aladdin song. If you want to do that one for us.
Hey.
You got that one?
You could go there too. Yes. Street rat. I don't buy that. Let's not get too hasty.
I knew you had it. Yeah. So yes, I guess it's interesting, and I'm just kind of thinking about this out loud right now. But part of me, I guess my initial reaction was like, oh, but God didn't want these people, the Israelites, to be influenced by other cultures, but yet he let some of these people out of Egypt who weren't Israelites go with them. But I think the point that you made was so interesting, is that they had seen God's work, and some part of them responded to that.
There was
And so I guess that's an interesting thing to think about, because along the way, as the Israelites, we talked about like Rahab, as people are coming into seeing the power of God, they're being brought in to this community, whether or not they fully know what it means to identify as a follower of God. And so I guess I'm just processing right now even how that's so beautiful that God in his kindness knows that these people have they're like riffraff. Yeah. That sounds cruel.
And who knows what steps they were able to take toward God.
They're being brought into the family of God. And so because they believed in him. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think like they're mentioned because there was the complaint.
Yeah.
And there was the grumbling. But again, like you said, God is kindness. Who knows who took greater steps of faith toward God during that journey in the wilderness. So I think it's a beautiful reminder of just because we want to be a witness to those around us, we also have to be careful of how much time we spend with those around us that could impact our faith in a negative way too. So it's a balance. We got to pray for wisdom, discernment in those moments, because again, it'll lead to grumbling.
Yeah. Well, so as we're wrapping up this whole series, I'm curious for you, what's one of the primary things that you yourself maybe will take from the sermon series, or something that you really hope our church would take from this time together in the desert, in the wilderness?
It's been a journey. I think for me, it's the wilderness account. It's a warning. And it's an instruction guide and a blueprint to really trusting God, that Israel's story, it is our story. And the same traps they fell into, we're susceptible of those today. And so for me, it's trusting that God really is good, that he really does see the bigger picture, and he's trusting that his plans for us really are good. And so it's a signpost to Jesus. It all points to Jesus in his love for us, his kindness. And so, it's my hope that as a church, we're encouraged that God is faithful. And even through some of the greatest challenges that we will ever face, we can trust him, because he will lead us through it. Yeah. But it's all about trust. And I think this is kind of where it's ended with grumbling, is let's trust God.
Well, and even like you said, we don't have a high priest who's unable to sympathize. So he has also been in the wilderness, and he did it perfectly, right? And so he's done it for us, and like you said, can lead us through. So
yeah. And when we don't know where we're going, we typically find ourselves waiting. And so I think it's perfect that it ended right at the beginning of December.
Oh, look at that tie-in, Brad.
Now we're waiting with great expectation.
Yeah,
with great hope, love, joy. Yeah, and it's leading to Jesus. Yeah. It always leads to Jesus. It's the beautiful part about Scripture. Every story, every book, every passage points to Jesus, whispers his name. Yeah. And that's true of our story, because we're written into it. So
yeah. Well, that's a great place to leave off for today.
Thanks, Allison.
Yeah, it's always great talking to you, Brad. Yeah. It's so fun to have you here.
Thanks for letting me rap Disney songs too. That's fun.
My favorite part, honestly. It's so fun. We're actually going to be taking a break from the podcast over the Christmas season, and but there's Advent resources for kids in our kids church, and then we'll be doing Advent in the services every Sunday together as well, lighting a candle and reading through some scripture. Beautiful. It is really beautiful.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you.
Northway, Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Tell everybody.
So we will be back in the first weekend of February. So I hope everyone has a great Christmas, and we will see you back in February.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
See ya.